you. Welcome to the Red Road East. I'm your host, Fierce Truth Seeker. Yeah, and today, this is Sacred Sun Days. I know I have been off of the Sacred Sun Days for a while. Fierce Truth Seeker was under the weather. I know it's springtime, but the weather here in New York has been kind of crazy. Um, kind of yo-yoing, you know, from week to week, day to day. So also, I've been kind of off of my eating regimen too. See, there's a direct correlation between diet and this ease, okay, and diet, all the things that ail us, okay. So I'm back on point now, and I stopped eating like a fool, okay. And I know that the title of the show is the Marcus Garvey continuation, Moors and Indians discussion. That will be at 12:30. We're starting off with the Sacred Sundays sermon first, okay? And for the Garvey discussion at 12:30, we're a little bit off, so I say we're going to start it at 12:35 because we're getting off to a little bit of a later start than I wanted to. Um, but my guest, there was a little mix up with the timing and everything with my guest, Professor Mark Christian, Dr. Mark Christian, and he was unaware that we were still doing the show. It was because I sent the link a day later than he expected to get the link, so he thought that it was not a go. However, we're going to be rescheduling with Professor Christian for should be Tuesday. I'm going to confirm that with him today, and we will continue with the discussion on Garvey anyway. Okay, today. All right. So, for those who are generous enough to leave a donation, I have two. Um, I put two references for you in the chat for PayPal and for Cash App. Okay. All right. And we're going to start with the presentation. And this particular presentation today, this sermon, is going to be dealing with parasites. Okay. And I don't want you to go anywhere because this discussion affects everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. Okay, you do not want to miss this discussion because you may think it has nothing to do with you. However, it does have everything to do with you. So, in 2 minutes, we will start. Okay, I'm going to set up the other computer so that I can monitor and make sure that the quality of the show is what it's supposed to be. The quality of everything, sound and all of that stuff. So I'm going to set that up and be back in about 2 minutes. Okay. All right. So we have three people, watching. Okay, that's good. So give me 1 second here. Two people now. Okay. So parasites. This particular discussion on parasites may seem minor. However, when I decided to do, or should I say, when I got the inspiration to do this particular sermon on parasites, I went online to pull up a couple of images of parasites, and I had also went on YouTube and typed in the word parasites, and I saw all of these videos on parasites because my angle is that parasites are demons, okay? And I'm actually not the author of that wisdom. I was that was brought to my attention by someone who was a student of Dr. Cam Ewan. Okay, and they were talking about how parasites are interdimensional and they're demons. And so when I went on YouTube, I saw all of these videos. I saw a whole bunch of people doing videos on parasites being demons, and so I'm like, wow, I didn't even know all these videos existed. You know, they're talking about the same thing that I was going to be talking about in the sermon. So I'm like, well, man, this is in divine order for me to talk about, because a lot of people think that parasites are just a phenomenon of third world countries. Okay, and people think, oh, we ain't got to worry about that. We have the best water here in America. Our sanitation is, top notch, and this, that, and the other. You know, um, because I know my mom, used to tell me about how when my mom, when I was growing up, she would always talk about how when she was growing up in the Caribbean, that it was a very common thing, for people to have worms and you know go to the bathroom and there be worms coming out of, in their stool and things of that nature, and you know and people just think that that just exists there. However, even here in America, we have a parasite problem. The thing is, you just don't know it. Okay. And what a lot of people don't know is that these parasites are very intelligent. Parasites, again, you know, they they're really they're demons. Okay. They get into your body and they mimic certain certain diseases. A lot of times when you think you have tumors and cancer and things of that nature, what you're actually dealing with is a parasite infestation, okay? And the waste that comes from the parasites, okay? And this is a good book. I read this book a long time ago, and it's called Parasites, The Enemy Within, okay? And it's a small book. And this is by Hannah Kroger, HANNAKROEGER. Okay, I'll put that up in the screen so that y'all can see it. Put it over a little bit. Okay, and this is a small. It's only like about 62 pages. Okay, if you include all the other extra pages in the back, the book references and all that stuff, it's like about like six about like 65, 66 pages. Okay. And this small book is very informative. Okay. Um, but parasites are very intelligent, and a lot of times different cravings that we have, like a lot of you are sugar junkies, okay? And a lot of times when you're craving all this sugar, see, parasites thrive off of sugar, okay? And a lot of times when you have different cravings, so you have all kinds of parasites, you know, and they all crave different things. So a lot of times when you think you're craving, like, let's say, like, you're fiending for, that cake, oh man, I gotta have that carrot cake. A lot of times what it is that a particular parasite in your body is sending a signal to your brain. This is just how intelligent they are. They're sending a signal to your brain and telling you to crave that carrot cake because that parasite wants to eat that carrot cake. Okay. Or it could be any other type of processed foods. Oh man, right now, I just want a Mickey D's hamburger. Okay. One of those parasites are sending a message to your brain for you to crave that Mickey D's murder burger. Okay. And like I said, it may sound ridiculous, but I'm not new to the study of parasites. A lot of you may be new to it and you haven't done, your homework on it. So it may sound ridiculous to you. However, these parasites are all throughout your body. They even get up into your brain and, everywhere. All right. So I'm just going to read a little something to you from this book just to give you an idea. Also, if you listen to there's some other people who talk about parasites too a lot. If you listen to the late Dr. Bob Marshall, he talks about it on his shows. That's at QN Labs. You go to quantumnutritionlabs.com and you listen to the archive shows. He talks a lot about parasites. Also, Dr. Vincent Medici. Okay. Dr. Vincent Medici, he talks a lot about parasites. You go to medicimedicine.com. You can listen to his archives. You give a donation, like a one time, I think it's like $40 yearly donation, something like that. But it's like a whole university, and you get access to all the archive shows. He's actually Dr. He is Dr. Bob Marshall's student, and he just took Bob Marshall stuff to another level. Anyway, let me read the introduction here. So, in the introduction in this book, it says a parasite is an organism that derives its food, nutrition, and shelter by living in or on another organism. In biology, the parasitic way of life is very common. There are more organisms in the world that have parasites than organisms that live otherwise. Humans may be a host to over 100 different types of parasites. Most people seem to think that a parasitic infestation is uncommon, especially here in North America. It is a topic most people don't want to discuss. We assume it is a disease of underdeveloped countries. In some instances, this may be true, especially with the lack of food sanitation. There are many species of parasites that show no socioeconomic boundaries and may be found in all climates. Nowadays, with air travel and the added mobility of our population, people may become exposed to a greater threat of parasitic infestations. Many immigrants harbor parasites from their native countries, and armed forces personnel returning home have been known to also carry the infections. Okay. And that's another thing, too. You know, you got to be careful. Guys, you got to be careful when you sleep with, women sometimes from foreign countries. They may have these parasites. Same thing with women, too. You know, it sounds funny. And as a matter of fact, one of my coworkers back in the days, a Haitian brother, had put me onto that years ago. He told me that. I was like, really? And then, was reading this book here, and sure enough, his book is co-signing on what he was saying, because different areas, that's just how it is. That's just the nature of the parasites. There's many, many different species of parasites, and people and animals, as well become, they harbor these parasites, you know. And let me see here. Let me continue on. What do you have to know about parasites? Once worms or parasites are established in the body, these invaders do four things. Worms can cause physical trauma to the body by perforation of the intestines, the circulatory system, the lungs, the liver, and so on. When chyme is released into the perforated intestines, it oozes into the lymph system. Allergies are the first reaction. In other words, worms can make Swiss cheese out of your organs. Chyme is the mixture prepared in the duodenum so the intestine can absorb it. Two, worms can also erode, damage, or block certain organs. They can lump together and make a ball, a tumor, so to speak. They can go into the brain, heart, lungs, and make untold misery for the host. Parasites have to eat, so they rob us of our nutrients. They like to take the best of our vitamins and amino acids and leave the rest to us. Many people become anemic. Drowsiness after meals is another sign that worms are present. Four, the last and most important way these scavengers cause damage is by poisoning us with their toxic waste. Each worm gives off certain metabolic waste products that our already weakened bodies have trouble disposing of. The poisoning of the host with the parasite's waste is a condition called verminous intoxication. It can be very serious for the sufferer, and it is difficult to diagnose. That's another thing. See, when you go to the doctor and you get diagnosed with these different diseases and stuff like that, they're not even checking for parasites. Okay, unless it's just like your typical type of parasite situation, they're not even checking for that. As a matter of fact, they're not even educated on an in-depth study of parasites. They don't do that. Okay, and these parasites mimic a lot of the diseases that we have. Okay, um let me see, somebody is in the chat. Okay, we got people in the chat. Yeah. um for those who are just joining, um we have a two-part show, and on Sundays we start off with our spiritual hour. Okay, and I give the sermon. Okay, and on sacred sun days, we deal with the spiritual, the esoteric side of the culture. Okay, and so we're starting off the first half hour um, with the sermon. Okay, and this is the Fierce Truth Seekers Healing Ministry. Okay, at 12:30. We started a little bit late, so it'll probably be about 12:45. We'll get into the Garvey discussion. Okay, um, but we're talking here about the knowledge of parasites and how these parasites are actually demons. They're interdimensional. Okay, for those who just joined, you'll have to listen to the beginning of the discussion where I was breaking that down. And a lot of people feel that you can take certain herbs, you can, I can take this wormwood, or I can take this black walnut, and all these different herbs and things like that to get rid of parasites. I'm sorry, but it does not get rid of the parasites. It may get rid of some of the parasites. Forget what you heard. Okay, I'm telling you that it does not get rid of all of the parasites. It will get rid of some. However, they leave their eggs behind. Okay, and they just grow more. Not only that, but it's almost impossible to kill these parasites, because what these parasites do is they put on a bulletproof armor. And what I mean by that is, when you have thick blood, okay, the parasites hide right inside of that thick blood, and those herbs don't even touch them. Okay, so first you have to clean the blood before you can even get to the parasites. If you don't clean that blood, okay, and you don't thin that blood, and when I say thin, I don't mean using the blood thinners from the doctor and stuff like that. I'm talking about from a holistic regimen. Okay, you got to thin that blood, because most of you have thick blood. You eating processed foods, you're eating an overabundance of cooked foods, you're gonna have thick blood. And eventually, what that stuff is going to do is going to lead to heart attack, stroke, and things of that nature anyway. Okay. So, you have to take, you have to begin to get on a regimen of a plant-based diet, okay, and a more raw food type of diet. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to the extreme. So you never go to the extremes anyway. Okay. Forget what you heard. Okay. I'm telling you, you don't have to go all the way to the extreme. You have some who feel, oh, you got to be 100% raw. No, you don't. Okay. Because number one, you have the whole concept of eating right for your blood type. Okay. Get that book, Eating Right for Your Blood Type. And even with that, you don't take that to the extreme, but you use that as a guide. Okay. So you want to start eating right for your blood type. Get that book. It's called How to Eat Right for Eating. I think it's either How to Eat Right for Your Blood Type or Eating Right for Your Blood Type. Either way, you go on Amazon, it's going to come up. Okay. And you want to do that. Also, you want to start making at least, because I used to be 100% raw foodist. Okay. And I was that for a long time. Anybody who knows me will tell you that I was that, a raw foodist for a long time. But what I found out is that you don't have to be 100% raw food. Okay. You can, it's like, everything is about balance, man. You have to be balanced. I would say, if you're doing anywhere in the 75 to 80% raw food range, you're good. Okay. And you want to stay away from processed food. Parasites love processed foods. And if you think you don't have parasites, you better think again. Okay. If you're having a lot of unexplained pains in your body that the doctors don't know what the hell it is, more than likely you have a parasite somewhere. Okay. If your ass is always itching, okay, you got a parasite or a worm up in there. Trust me. Okay. That's a good sign that you have a parasite or a worm. Okay. As if your ass is itching. Okay. So anyway, we'll continue on with that. I want to continue reading here. All right. So an infected individual may feel bloated, tired, or hungry, and also have allergies, gas, unclear thinking, and generally may feel toxic. Certain parasites have the ability to fool the body of the host into thinking that the worm is a normal part of the body tissue. Therefore, the body will not fight the intruder. The host now works twice as hard to remove both its own waste and that of the parasite. Okay. Let me see something. Let me just see who we have in here. El God, M.A. Peace, peace, peace. My native name. Fucks what you know one. Fucks what you know no one. Hey, how you doing, good brother? He says, Alito, good brother, please check your emails. Your Choctaw sister is trying to reach you. Oh, wait a minute. Tess must leave for work now. Oh, Tess. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. Tess in the house. Okay, I will do that. I will check my email. Yeah. Yeah, my Choctaw sister. And who else we have here? Hoprofeta. Physically unable to like the video. Pressed unlike just to see if it would work. No. What's up with that? Yeah, these YouTube sometimes bugs out.
I don't know what, that happens to me sometimes, when I go on other videos and, sometimes you try to, or it could be, let me see. I wonder if maybe, because I know sometimes what it is if you hadn't signed in, but then again, if you didn't sign in, then the name wouldn't show up. I don't know. That's weird. But I know YouTube messes with my channel anyway. They've been messing with me ever since the early 2000s. Yeah, they fear this channel. Oh yeah, this is the most dangerous channel on YouTube. Anyway, um, yeah. So reading on, it says parasites can be present in any disease. Most doctors will not necessarily treat every infection. See, he's saying the same thing, and I hadn't read this book in probably a decade. That's you know, but he's saying the same thing I'm saying. He says most doctors will not necessarily treat every infection unless the infection is heavy and the host is showing serious signs of disease. From his standpoint, this may be justifiably so because many of the drugs that are used to treat an infection are very strong. They work on the premise of differential toxicity. This means that the drug is hopefully more toxic to the parasite than it would be to the host. Sometimes this margin is slim. Most people with parasitic infections are also usually undernourished, weak, full of either viral, fungal, or bacterial infections, and have various types of chemical and metal poisoning. God has allowed us some help. When you treat a person naturally for a parasitic infestation, it is best to treat the whole person, usually involving some form of detox program and a nutritional rebuilding program, allowing the body to restore balance and health. This, along with an understanding of how infection was acquired and how to avoid the infection in the future, will allow the individual to become more self reliant in the area of healthcare. Okay, so now he gets into some of the different types of worms. Okay, these, no, he says there are 5 different groups of parasitic invaders. One, roundworms. Two, the single cell parasites. Three, the tapeworm family. Four, the flukes invaders. And five, spirochetus or spirochetus. I could be butchering that word, so don't hold me to that. Okay, roundworms. This is a drawing of roundworms. Okay, don't take this information lightly because I can pretty much bet any amount of money that everyone that is listening right now has parasites in their body. Guarantee you. You have some type of worm or parasite in your body right now. Okay. And give me 1 second. I'm going to read something to you. I'm going to share the screen. Give me 1 second. One second. Okay. And this is from a website called The Life Tree. Okay. And here you can see uh, pictures of a couple of parasites. Okay. And let me read one second here. What happened? Okay. Parasitic picture gallery. Warning, this page may disturb you. An extraordinary variety of viruses, bacteria, parasites, and organisms stand ready to attack us and feed off our body's cells. Using microscopes of varying power, photographers can now show us a teeming microbial world that could help. I'm sorry, that a teeming microbial world that could barely be imagined without their help. Dr. Herman R. Bueno. Most individuals would be truly amazed if they knew the extraordinarily high number of Americans who are unknowingly affected by parasites. Here's Dr. Oz, the truth about parasites and why you should cleanse your body. See, even Dr. Oz is talking about it. And Dr. Ross Anderson, ND, says other prominent physicians agree with me that in human history, the parasite challenge is likely the most unrecognized of all endemic problems because they cannot be seen and rarely present immediate symptoms. They remain invisible as a cause or contributing factor to what can be a serious disorder. What can be done about it? Okay, I have not tried any of these products, so I'm not endorsing any of these products. Okay, I'm just reading from the information uh, on here. Okay, I can probably say this is probably just some snake oil, but then again, I could be wrong. But what I do know is that, you can't just take some herb and get rid of these parasites. Don't let anybody fool you like that. I'll tell you about how to. We may have to do a part two of this discussion, and we'll talk about how to get rid of these parasites. Okay, here's some more images here. As you see these pictures, these are different parasites. I told you these are demons, man, and these things are interdimensional. Don't take that lightly. Okay, they're very intelligent. Parasites are extremely intelligent. Okay, parasite picture gallery. The approximate sizes of microbes can be approximated by using the following rule of thumb. Viruses are the smallest of all infectious agents, averaging about 100 nanometers, 100 billionths of a meter in length. They have so few genes and proteins of their own that in order to reproduce, they need to commandeer the machinery of the cells they invade. Bacteria vary widely in size and shape, but tend to be at least 10 times larger than viruses, or at least 1 micrometer, 1 millionth of a meter long. They are single cell organisms that reproduce independently. Single cell organisms tend to be at least 10 times larger than bacteria, or about 0.01 meters long. Multicellular organisms are so large they can usually be seen with the naked eye. Tapeworms, for instance, can reach a length of 6 meters, about 20 feet. Hold on. Did you hear me? Tapeworms, for instance, can reach a length of 6 meters, 20 feet. I, all of you should be screaming right now. All of you should be screaming. Let me see who we have in the chat. Let's see. If you want to get, Anthony says, if you want to get rid of them, just use pine gum spirits of turpentine and sugar. Okay, yeah, turpentine, turpentine. Yeah, a lot of our ancestors, um, including mine, that was a old folk remedy that people used to use, turpentine. You know, um, however, there are some uh, there are some schools of thought with the turpentine in terms of how safe it is. You know, I'm not saying not to use it. Um, you have to do your homework on that. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna have a brother come on and talk about it because he is an expert in that area of turpentine use, and he's used turpentine um, for getting rid of parasites, and he's told me some of his stories of how he used turpentine to get rid of the parasites. Again, I have to do more homework on the safety of using turpentine, but I know that a lot of our indigenous ancestors used to use the turpentine to get rid of those parasites and worms and things of that nature. um, and Anthony Brooks says he's been on it for 8 years. I feel you, man. I feel you. Yeah. If you want to do a more natural way, without doing the turpentine, again, I like to. This is just me. It's not for everybody. This is just me. My philosophy is an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. You know, So, I like to go to the root of the problem and to get it at the source, by modifying the way that I eat, uh, fasting, okay? Parasites, if you starve them out, you know, and use, certain herbs and things of that nature, and thin that blood, you know, they're going to have to go. But there's different remedies for those who are not going to be as disciplined as I am, you know with the eating regimen and all of that, and the holistic type of eating and things of that nature. Then you may want to go that route with the turpentine. And Anthony says, you can't get more natural the way I'm doing it. I get it straight from the pine tree. Straight from the pine tree. Okay. If you have some information that you'd like to share, hit me up on my email. Before the lecture is over, I'll leave my email. And if you have some information you want to share on that, feel free. Like I said, I haven't done, I've done a little bit of homework in terms of some of the pros and cons of the turpentine. um but please do share. But when I say the natural, actually the more natural way is not getting it straight from the pine tree. The more natural way is, like I said before, an ounce of prevention is always better than a pound of cure. Okay, that's the most natural way, you know. However, you can do things like, you know, taking things for that, but if you go to the root of the problem, then you don't have to do all of that, is what I'm saying. And that is the whole premise of holistic healing, okay, is to holistic healing is about cutting it off at the source of the problem. You know, if you cut off their food supply, then you don't need to take anything external. You see what I'm saying? That's my whole point, you know. But anyway, yeah, I appreciate anything. Oh, Dr. Jennifer Daniels. Yeah, yeah. Dr. Jennifer, I think that is the same, yeah, the same doctor that the good brother that I'm matter of fact, the brother was on the show before, brother Right Ill. Um he is he is the medicine man that he always talks about the turpentine. And yeah, Dr. Jennifer Daniels, yeah, yeah, that's the doctor that he referred me to as well. Yes, yes, for sure. And um uh Anthony says you must have a problem in the first place to deal with the problem. Well, not necessarily. You can cause a problem. You have to cause a problem. It's like, you know, if you have beef with somebody on the street, right? You know, uh, you cause beef with somebody, then you're gonna have a problem. But if you avoid that beef, you're not gonna have a problem. You see what I'm saying? So it's about avoidance, you know, then because what causes it, when you eat again, when you eat processed foods, when you eat, you know, all of this thing, what they call this, what we here in North America, the sad diet, standard American diet. A lot of these things that they tell you are good for you to eat, it's not really good for you to eat. You got to do your knowledge on that. You got to do your research on the you know the problems with the sad diet, and it's got the right name, sad. The stand, that acronym, standard American diet. It's not called sad for a reason, but it is sad. But again, a lot of these things that ail us didn't just happen out of thin air. It's caused by incorrect um eating. Okay, there's a direct correlation between diet and dis-ease. Okay, and the same way that you had created the problem, so we create these problems, they didn't just happen to us, we create the problem. You see what I'm saying? So the same way you create the problem, you can get rid of the problem. If eating incorrectly caused the problem, you know, you can eat correctly and get rid of the problem. Okay. I'm not telling you anything that I'm saying that I read in a book. I'm telling you based on my personal experience. Okay. I have people all the time who come up to me and, they talk about different products and, say you should take this and that and that and the other. And I say the same thing that I'm saying to you right now. I don't need that stuff. Okay. I've healed myself of many things just through correct eating alone. My wife can tell you that right now. Okay. She's a firsthand. witness. And also, she is a first-hand um, patient of mine, okay, who I have helped her to, and I'm not going to put all of her personal business out there, but I have, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I have assisted in her healing with dealing with various health issues. Okay, so I'm not telling you anything that I don't know from personal practice. Okay, not what I read, though I have read lots of books and I've studied under many masters. Okay, but I'm telling you what I've done for myself and also prescribed for other people. Okay, but with that being said, um, and I thank you, Anthony, for your input. Your input is definitely well taken. I appreciate you. Um, Single cell organisms. Oh, we read that already. Okay. Food and water are the most common sources of parasite and invading organism transmission. Okay, so here again, see, this is proof of what I was saying before. The problem comes to us. You see what I'm saying? So, through what we put into our bodies. You see what I'm saying? Um, since most of what since most of us eat 3 times a day and drink water frequently throughout the day, our exposure to these sources is constant. Tap water has been found to be contaminated with harmful organisms. So again, if you're drinking tap water, okay, you're going to cause yourself, again, the problem is what you put into your body. Okay, you're drinking tap water, you're going to be a victim of parasites. By now, if you don't know, you should know that you don't want to be drinking tap water. Okay, um, both plant and animal foods carry parasites, and cleaning and cooking methods often destroy them before ingestion. The CDC cites food as the catalyst behind 80% of the pathogenic outbreaks in the US. See, so again, this is confirming what I was just saying about the things we put in our body causing the parasites. Okay. Um, Most are linked to restaurants and delis where less than sanitary conditions exist, from food preparation and storage to the utensils and servers' hands. Okay, let me tell you something. You do not want to be going to work in the morning and running to the deli to get your breakfast. I know it's hard sometimes, but you're setting yourself up for these parasites and things of that nature. Most of the delis, they don't, number one, let's just be real about it. A lot of these people, they'll come and they'll handle your money, okay? And they will go and prepare your food without even washing their hands. Even if they have gloves, plastic gloves, if they're touching money and with the same glove preparing your food, what do you think's going to happen to the food? Parasites, okay? Do you know how filthy money is? Okay, a greenback, you know, a dollar bill, especially a dollar bill. Come on, you know what happens with dollar bills. All you guys who be up in the strip club, you know, every weekend, y'all know what happens to those dollar bills, where it goes. behind these women's butt cracks and, with all the tricks they do with their vagina and all that stuff, you know, come on now. And they're going to touch that same money that's been up in the butt crack, been up in the vagina, with all the tricks and all these things, okay? And they're going to touch your food with that same money. Prepare your breakfast, okay? Prepare your sandwich, okay? Touch that ham that y'all like to eat, or that bacon, or touch that bread and that cheese, you know, whatever, and prepare your meals. Come on. You don't think that there's tons and tons and tons of parasites being transferred to that food, and that egg sandwich that you're getting ready to eat, you know, whole bunch of parasites getting ready to go into your body. Okay? But anyway, we're going to continue this discussion. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to see if I can get Brother Right Ill in on this too, to get his input with this as well, because he's the medicine man. And we are a little behind schedule, so I'm going to close out with this discussion, and we're going to go into the Garvey discussion. Okay. And if you hold tight, let me stop sharing. We're going to continue with this article, okay, because it is very informative. Okay. Look at how disgusting that is. Y'all see that? Look at how disgusting that is. Sometimes when you feel things moving around in your eyes, those are actually worms. Okay. This is just how these worms and parasites, man, they're no joke. They are no joke. I'm telling you, do not take this discussion lightly. Okay. What Anthony says, all, all, and all these man putting his mouth in the wrong. I gotta put that up on the screen. Oh God. Anthony says, hold on. He said all these men putting their mouths in the wrong places. Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Putting their mouths in the wrong places. Let the imagination hang. To get into detail. And that's true too. Some of you nasty mothers out here, you know. Um, yeah, and also, yeah, Anthony, yeah, processed foods probably have so much chemicals. Yes, they do. In them. Parasites can't even survive in a lot of them. Um, yeah, well, what happens is with the processed foods is when you eat the processed foods, the parasites inside of your body feed off of them. These are the type of there's certain things that parasites feed off of, you know, and a lot of these things, different types of foods, number one, processed foods, a lot of them contain a lot of starch, you know, starch converts to sugar, parasites feed off of sugar. You see what I'm saying? So that's how that whole dynamic works, you know. And again, we'll get more into that in the next sermon, okay, on the next Sun Day. Okay, I break it down Sun Day because, as I told y'all in the first sermon and in other sermons, Sun Day is called Sun Day because the 7 days were named after the planets. Okay, so Sun Day is the day of the sun. Monday, MON, is the day of the moon. okay, and things of that nature. So we broke all that down, in previous discussions. We went through the whole 7 days and how those are the planets, and also the quote unquote what they call pagan deities and things of that nature. Okay, but anyway, I just want to leave you all with that. We're not leaving; we're just leaving that discussion, the sermon. And then now we're going to get into the Garvey um, discussion. So just give me a minute here. And I will say, on that note, we're going to close out with that discussion. I'll say Doda Daga Han E for those who came for the spiritual thing. Now we get into the historical stuff. Okay. So give me a second here. Give me a second. Let me just set up for this. Hold tight. 1 second. Oh, and also, uh, for those who are generous enough to leave a donation in the chat at the beginning, if you scroll all the way up to the top, I left where for those who are generous enough who want to leave a Cash App donation and also PayPal. The information is there. Be much appreciated. You don't have to, not I'm not materialistic, caught up in money and all that. It just helps with the research and things that we're trying to do to be able to be of greater service to you all. Okay, and so yeah, give me 1 second. Let me set up for the next discussion here. Hold tight. Okay, so all right, Shio, everybody. Welcome to the Red Road East. I am your host, Fierce Truth Seeker. And for those who joined the discussion late, I explained earlier that um, I was supposed to have Professor Mark Christian on the show. However, there was a miscommunication, and he is not going to be able to be on today. So we rescheduled because there was a miscommunication. He was confused about the timing, this, that, and the other. So I spoke with him earlier, and we are looking at Tuesday as being a time for rescheduling. However, we will continue the discussion today. Okay. Uh, and let's see here. Um, Someone's asking a question. Um, Anthony's asking, do you know the meaning of the medals Garvey used to sport? Can you be a little more specific, Anthony? Yeah, if you could be a little more specific about what you mean by the medals. And in the meantime, while you're typing that in, I'll continue on. Yeah. So with the reason why I was going to have Professor Mark Christian is because his image was used on a particular platform, and they used a clip, a video clip of him, and his words were taken out of context, and he was very upset about that. So he expressed that um, he would like to express his thought in entirety as opposed to listening to a soundbite of what he said in a documentary because his words were taken out of context. And he would also like to correct the misinformation that was put out by the person that used his particular soundbite. He wanted to put that into perspective, and also the misinformation that was put out by um, the entirety of the presentation by that person on Marcus Garvey. Okay, and give me 1 second. Just pulling up a document here. All right, cue that up. Okay, so yeah, and so he will more than likely be on Tuesday. But anyway, so this particular lecture here, this is the continuation of the Empire Strikes Black series, which I did. It was about started about 3 years ago. Okay, and in that whole series of the Empire Strikes Black is a series of topics, okay, dealing with the empire. And when we talk about empire, we're talking about the Moorish Empire, okay. So under that, the first topic was the lineage of the Aboriginal movement. Then after that was Moors and Indians, friends and enemies. Okay, that Moors and Indians is the second topic. And each of those, the first, the lineage of the Aboriginal movement, that was about maybe 10 lectures, I think. Maybe no more than that, I think. Was it maybe 15 lectures? I don't even remember. It was a lot. And now with this one, the second topic, Moors and Indians, friends or enemies, is the second topic. Okay. And this is part 19 of Moors and Indians, Friends or Enemies, lecture number 10. Okay, so we had done with Moors and Indians, Friends or Enemies, we did 19 presentations. Okay, and this is lecture 10 of just Marcus Garvey alone. Okay, so we did 19. So this is a lot, and this is just how extensive we've covered this subject. So it was 19 parts, and then we on that we did Marcus Garvey as a topic. It came up, and we did 10 lectures so far just on Marcus Garvey. So that's quite a bit. So anyway, so what I want to deal with today is the topic of, because this is going to come up too at some point. Some people had expressed concerns about whether Marcus Garvey was behind the death um, of Mother Kofi. Okay. And the answer to that is no. Okay. And it had already been proven that he did not, was not behind the death of Mother Kofi. And what we're going to do now, I'm not just going to talk, but I'm going to um, present um, the receipts on that. Okay. So I'm going to share this particular, and for those who, if this is your first time joining this discussion on Garvey, it would be good for you to start from the first discussion on Garvey and work your way up to this one, and you'll be caught up. Okay. So, anyway, I'm going to share the screen. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right. So, this here is an article from the Coral Gables Museum.org, and this is the date is March 8th. Um, I said the date of the murder was March 8th, 1928. Okay. And it says here, it was an overcast evening, dampened by light showers, as the crowd moved into Fox Thompson's Hall in Liberty City. They had come to hear Mother Kofi, the lecturer and missionary whom the community and indeed many of the nation's urban black population had come to know over the past 2 years. As a speaker for the Universal Negro Improvement Association in recent years, thousands had flocked to hear her impassioned speeches, on the need for the black population to reclaim their native patrimony by returning to Africa. However, when she founded the African Universal Church the year before and began mixing the UNIA's purely secular goals with deeply religious overtones, the relationship had become bitter. When she split off from the UNIA, she took with her most of their local members to her church. UNIA felt betrayed and irate. Tension and anger were running high. Tonight's rally was to be her first as a member of the Universal, as a member of the African Universal Church. And Mother Kofi was not surprised. There were more than a few UNIA hecklers in the crowd. Shortly before 10 p.m., she stepped up to the podium, motioned to her bodyguard to sit down, unusual for her, and opened the Bible to begin a reading from the 13th chapter of Isaiah to open the evening. But there was no chance for her to utter a sound before one of a small group of high ranking UNIA supporters stepped inside the doors and from 50 feet shot two bullets into her head. Mother Kofi was dead before she hit the floor. The crowd turned in a rage on the man who had apparently fired the shots. In true Old Testament biblical fashion, he was beaten and stoned to death by bricks before police could even arrive. Two murders in a matter of minutes had not only killed the revered Kofi and her alleged assailant. The events of that night turned Mother Kofi into an instant martyr and marked the end of the UNIA in Miami. But who was this woman who had been assassinated at the pulpit? Who was Mother Kofi? Around 1917 to 1918, a woman said to be from the Gold Coast of Africa, whose started age at the time would have to be ranged from 23 to 43. The former is likely the closest to the mark, arrived in the United States. Okay, so Mother Kofi was from Africa. Okay, um, she was known as Laura Adorker Kofi. Her last name would be spelt in other variations, frequently Kofey, but also Kofy and Koffey. Based on evidence recently discovered in the tattered burial ledgers of Miami's Far Funeral Home, Kofi was born in Accra, Africa, on April 26, 1892. At the time of her death, Farr's records noted she was the wife of Joseph Kofi, indicating Adorker was her maiden name. The funeral ledger also recorded that the provider of the information supplied to Farr was an Inez Kofi of Jacksonville, Florida, a town with which Laura would be closely identified. Despite the ledger being contemporary with her death, no record whatsoever can be found of Joseph Inez Kofi under the variations of the surname in any public records or newspaper articles. As of now, all we must go by is that in the USA, she was consistently referred to as Laura Adorker Kofi. She was also referred to as being an African princess, the daughter of Kneshifi, one of the seven kings of Africa's Gold Coast, later Ghana, and was said to have been born near Accra. Skeptical reporters would typically put quotation marks around her title, while distractors, well, I'm sorry, while detractors would claim she was not African at all, but had been born Laura Champion in Athens, Georgia. This allegation was successfully dispelled in 2008 by religious history scholar Richard S. Newman, who compiled compelling evidence Kofi was born in Ghana. So, whether she was a princess or not, it is safe to say, it's safe to state she was an African by birth. After coming to the United States, she apparently lived in Detroit for several years. Some sources said she was a Red Cross nurse, while others were certain she had worked in New Orleans as a teacher. A strong activist for blacks. No one, whether they were followers or detractors, would dispute that she was a powerful, inspiring speaker. In the early 1920s, she joined the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, as a field director. She would prove to be a critical, it would prove to be a critical turning point in her life. The UNIA had been founded in 1914 by Marcus Garvey, the controversial political activist, publisher, orator, and president of the Black Star shipping line, Marcus Garvey. Strictly in particular, strictly secular in nature, the UNIA had no religious affiliation. In broad strokes, the organization's goal was to unite all of Africa and its diaspora into one grand racial hierarchy by facilitating the return of Africans to their ancestral homeland and to promote black nationalism. Its growth was rapid. Garvey inaugurated the New York division or chapter in 1917 with 13 members. Within 3 months, dues paying membership had reached 3,500. By 1920, there were more than 1,900 divisions in over 40 countries. Kofi's rise within the organization was rapid, and she soon became their national field director and sought after spokesperson. Wilbert White wrote an essay on her that she said she had a revelation to liberate African American people, to take them on the right course back to the promised land, Africa, and to create an independent community, a cultural independent community. Within months, she becomes the most popular figure in that group, the UNIA, except for Marcus Garvey. Garvey sent her throughout the Deep South to attract more members to the UNIA. With Jacksonville, Florida as her home base, Kofi traveled extensively promoting the UNIA and was spectacularly successful. In Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and every town and city where she spoke, Kofi attracted crowds of up to 15,000 people. Garvey, who was in Alabama, Garvey, who was in an Alabama penitentiary, having been indicted for mail fraud related to his Black Star shipping line, initially re- remained supportive of Kofi. It was only when she began introducing religion into the picture that a serious rift between the two began. The UNIA had steadfastly avoided any involvement with religious matters and maintained a passive understanding with local churches infringe not to infringe on their place in the heart of African American communities. As early as 1925, Kofi was being considered a leader in the Back to Africa movement, particularly in the South. In May that year, while still ostensibly representing the UNIA, she spoke for an entire week and twice on Sunday, and she credited with securing 900 new members to the UNIA. By now, however, her religious fervor was subsuming the UNIA's message. The press hailed her as a real conscientious race lover and a radical one, too. Kofi claimed to have a burning message from the kings of the Gold Coast, West Africa, that the door is now open in the Gold Coast to the 400 million Negroes of the world, and no power can shut it out until all have entered. Kofi claimed to have been sent by her father and her people in America to find the lost children of Africa and take them home. She relayed plans to build sawmills in Alabama to pay for leased Japanese boats to carry out this mass exodus to Africa, where they would find a city especially made for them entirely of pearls. Kofi claimed to have met with imprisoned Garvey and to have received to receive his blessings for her efforts. It was around this time that Garvey followers and skeptics, perhaps jealous, claimed Kofi was not from Africa at all, that far from being a princess, she was just plain Laura Chaplin that hailed from Athens, Georgia, or perhaps Detroit, maybe New Orleans, that instead of being a princess, she was a Red Cross nurse or possibly a school teacher. Interestingly, none of these claims had surfaced when she was a rising star for Garvey and the UNIA. In 1927, Kofi, proclaiming herself a prophet, founded the African Universal Church based in Jacksonville. Her self-bestowed title was the warrior mother of Africa's warriors of the Most High God. Despite the UNIA's strict non-denominational stance, Kofi apparently saw no conflict between the UNIA and her church. Garvey from prison saw it differently. In August, Kofi and several other UNIA members visited Garvey in the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. They had a private conversation. What was discussed remains unknown, but apparently their meeting did not end in a particularly amicable fashion. Deciding that she was building too much of a following independent of the UNIA, Garvey denounced her publicly on October 10th, 1927, stating, "The woman is a fake and has no authority from me to speak," and strongly encouraged his followers to have her arrested for fraud. In November 1927, Garvey was pardoned by President Coolidge and was eventually deported via New Orleans to his native Jamaica. His deportation diminished UNIA's popularity greatly in the United States, and perhaps for that reason, Kofi began breaking away from the organization, although she continued to speak to UNIA chapters throughout Florida. Despite some misgivings over her personal safety, there was little stopping Kofi from mixing black nationalism with prophetic religious messages. She began to speak regularly on Sundays, which emptied the church pews and upset the dedicated balance between the UNIA and local ministries. She frequently preached, "I am a representative from the Gold Coast of Africa, seeking the welfare of Africa's children everywhere. God called me out of Africa to come over here and tell you, his people, what he could have you do." The upper tier of the UNIA became even more suspicious of their most renowned speaker, and saw to it she was expelled from Miami. After Garvey's pardon, Kofi had felt her life may itself could be in danger, and returned to Jacksonville, which she felt safer and certainly more welcome. Undeterred, Kofi continued to speak throughout Florida, ostensibly and inexplicably on behalf of the UNIA, although by this time she had apparently resigned from the organization. But at the same time, she perversely criticized their activities. She is said to have collected $19,000 during this speaking tour, over $275,000 in present value, in today's value, which was apparently disrupted when UNIA chapters in St. Petersburg and Jacksonville had her arrested for reasons that remain unclear. While jailed in Jacksonville, Kofi was strip searched to discover, so her enemies claimed, if she had voodoo roots on her body, to explain her to explain her undeniable charismatic power. Okay, so they suspected her of having juju or voodoo, what they call roots in the South. Okay, they thought she had roots with her, with the reason why she was such a dynamic speaker and things of that nature, is what they're saying here. To their dismay, no such growths could be found. A policeman supposedly said to her, "Princess, we did not put you in here. Your own people put you in here." Feathers still unruffled, Kofi returned to Miami in early March 1928. living in her home at 4 at 4045 Grand Avenue in Coconut Grove, and resuming her speaking engagements at UNIA halls and local churches. Much to the consternation, confusion, and anger of the local UNIA leaders, particularly uneasy were Claude Green, president of the local division, Maxwell Cook, and James Nemo, captain and colonel, respectively, of the uniformed branch of the local division. Nemo wired Garvey on March 7th, inquiring if, perhaps, during Kofi and Garvey's private conversation the previous August, Garvey decided to countenance Kofi's return to Africa preaching. Garvey promptly responded, stating Kofi had no authority from him to collect money for an exodus to Africa, and again denounced her as a fraud. Immediately on receipt of Garvey's response, three men, cablegram in hand, went to Liberty Hall, the name given to all UNIA halls in the country, to confront Kofi while she was speaking. As the crowd was overwhelmingly composed of Kofi followers, they resorted to jeering, causing a division between the minority in the crowd still loyal to Garvey and those who had entered Kofi's fold. Before the situation got out of hand, police padlocked the building, prohibiting either side from using the hall. Undeterred, Kofi, not to be outdone by Garvey, announced she would continue speaking at Fox Thompson's Hall at Northwest 15th Street and 5th Avenue, commencing the following evening on March 8th, 1928. Aftermath of an assassination, 1928. It took only seconds before the stunned crowd of over 200 followers realized what had transpired as Prince Laura Adorker Kofi fell to the floor at Fox Thompson's Hall. Death was instantaneous, while two of the three UNIA leaders present, Claude Green and James Nemo, had managed to escape the dark, cloudy night. Maxwell Cook was not so unfortunate, nor was his death quite as quick. The engaged mob brutally attacked Cook. The 33-year-old Cook was stabbed, beaten with fists, and pummeled with chairs, rocks, and bricks until he could not only until he was not only dead but mutilated almost beyond recognition. As one report put it, Cook was left dead on the field of combat. When the police arrived, armed with sawed off shotguns, they were confronted with a frenzied mob of rioters, by then reported to have ballooned to over 1,000. The region was swarming with a multitude who were distraught, furious, and looking for vengeance. For 2 hours, police managed to keep the volatile situation under some semblance of control until shortly after midnight, when when the coroner's jury ordered the removal of the bodies of Kofi and Cook. While it was believed that several people in the crowd had been injured by the riot, some severely, officers were unable to locate them. After a relative calm had been restored, safety precautions were taken throughout the Negro quarters of Miami, with a special patrol maintained throughout the night and early morning to prevent any reoccurrence of violence. Throughout the dark hours until daybreak, dim lights burned behind locked doors and shuttered windows as the black population from Coconut Grove to Liberty City tried to come to grips with what had transpired. The body of slain Kofi was taken to Farr Funeral Home at 1025 North West East 2nd Avenue, where she was embalmed, her burial outfit purchased, and her body dressed, the total cost of which, including assistance, was $99, a present day value of $1,453, in preparation of what would be the first of several funeral services. His services were requested by UNIA officials, and Farr's bill was paid by the organization. While Kofi's body was being readied for viewing, that of her alleged assailant, Maxwell Cook, was transported to another funeral home, but in one of those strange twists of fate, he would be buried at Lincoln Memorial Park, which was owned by Kelsey Farr. The newspaper headlines the next day were either lurid or condescending. Negro faction fight results in two killed, princess shot, while in pulpit and Slayer has mangled in right was certain to sell newspapers, while fuss in Negro church to die was a good example of the dismissive manner all too often used when referring to Miami's black population. The Miami News reported that an investigation was being conducted into troubled affairs of a Negro religious sect aligned with Marcus Garvey, obviously the UNIA, but unnamed by the reporter. The article made note of his troubled Black Star Line shipping and passenger line and his reparation plans to use Black Star as a way to transport blacks to immigrate to Africa, noting that the sect which had defected, also not named in the press, but clearly the African Universal Church, had divided the UNIA and Garveyism and Kofi's new church into two groups for the same time for some time. Another syndicated article, which appeared on March 10th, read Princess Dies Following Attack, referred to Kofi as a self styled African princess without mentioning the UNIA or Garvey. The article reported the late princess had been sent from the Gold Coast to induce Negroes to return to Africa in a colonization movement. The article continued that Kofi recently stated she had been arrested many times but was never convicted. It does appear Kofi had been indicted 6 times in Jacksonville, twice in Tampa, and detained in St. Petersburg over recent years for allegedly extorting money under false pretenses. As far as can be determined, despite the many arrests, Kofi appears to have been telling the truth. She was never found guilty of any crime. It was not inconceivable that some of the accusations that resulted in her being detained, at least in the last year or so, had been orchestrated in some fashion by the UNIA. The first of several funeral services were held March 11th at Farr's Funeral Home. The throng of mourners were so overwhelming, it was said the funeral home charged 25 cents for a moment's glimpse of Kofi in response, as there were multiple funeral homes involving multiple funeral homes. It is not clear which profited from Kofi's death. From Farr's parlors, the cortege, with an estimated 6,000 to 7,000 mourners following in its wake, traveled 66 miles to West Palm Beach for a second memorial service. More funerals and memorial services followed in Daytona Beach, St. Augustine, and virtually every city or town in which cortege stopped. In many cases, so many hundreds of people from the black communities crowded the sidewalks to pay their respects that street traffic had to be diverted. When the procession finally arrived in Jacksonville, there was a funeral, there was a final funeral service, but there was no burial. The St. Petersburg and Tampa congregation of her church were strongly advocating for Kofi's remains to be returned to Africa, while the Jacksonville congregation, the largest of her churches, was overwhelmingly arguing that she should be buried there. And then a surprise threw everyone off balance when cablegrams arrived March 19th that the oft mentioned but never seen King Kenefisi of the Gold Coast would be coming to sift through the death of Kofi, who he confirmed was his daughter. Not only uh, was his daughter, where are we? Not only did this throw a wrench into a possible burial, some were concerned that his probing threatened to open a whole new round of allegations regarding Kofi Garvey and the circumstances which led to her murder. The cables were received by the majority faction of the African Universal Church, who had initiated a civil suit to obtain possession of church property, according to Collins and Collins, the law firm representing them. It did not state who they were suing, but the most logical answer is the UNIA. The rest of the article revealed some other most interesting pieces of information. For example, Nefeshi, let me make sure I'm not butchering that name. Okay, yeah, it's Nesifi, yeah, Nefisi, Nesifi was reported to have sent Kofi to the United States to train blacks for military service in Liberia. The article stated that both Claude Green and James Nemo had been sent to Miami by exiled liberator Marcus Garvey to frustrate investigation of monies he was alleged to have collected in Miami and elsewhere to outfit ships with which to transport the Negroes back to their homeland. Instead, these monies were alleged to have gone into Garvey's own pockets. Green and Nemo, it continued, were also to prepare the Negroes in Miami for the arrival of a Garvey emissary who would revive his sinking movement and who would most likely attempt to collect more money. The article stated that it was Claude Green who had fired the fatal shots that killed Kofi, while Nemo had stood at the church door and given Green the signal when to shoot. According to Negro circles, Garvey had promised both Green and Nemo they would be well rewarded for their services if successful. This posed the question: did the congregation kill the wrong man? Collins and Collins stated that the seven kings of the Gold Coast had repudiated Garvey and his plans some time ago, primarily because Garvey wanted to keep the Negroes in his own African colony, while the seven kings had seen this reparation as an opportunity to open up profitable trade with the states. It was only after they had repudiated Garvey that Kofi was sent to America to ascertain the extent of Garvey's duplicity and to warn possibly gullible Negroes to beware of him. As a result of what was referred to as Garvey's machinations, many Miami Negroes had donated up to $600, a small fortune with a present value of almost $9,000. The story ignored one basic question: how many Negroes in Miami at this time had that type of money? In the aftermath of Kofi's murder, the only thing left to show for the millions of dollars Garvey had reportedly collected from a segment of society who could least afford it was $60,000 worth of machinery, supposedly used in Garvey's new African kingdom. Three ships, which had been purchased by Garvey to transport his followers to Africa, had never been turned over to this proposed colony. Garvey, who had been deported due to his questionable money making schemes, was said to be continuing his efforts from Jamaica to stage a return to power. When he learned of Kofi's arrival in the United States to check into allegedly dubious schemes, it was rumored he decided to put an end to her career with the bold stroke of assassination. The article boldly continued that Garvey's written instructions to his agents in Miami were to kill the princess. These written instructions, the article said, had been discovered and had been turned over to federal authorities. It made for sensational reading, but apparently nothing came of it. The damning instructions were never produced. Proof that Green had fired the fatal bullets was never provided. The question of how most Negroes could afford to donate such large amounts of money was never answered, and the exclusive King Nasifi never stepped foot in the United States. Now it was time for Green and Nemo to stand before judge and jury. On March 22nd, while these rumors whirled around the community, the Dade County grand jury returned first degree murder indictments against Green and Nemo. A month late, the case was docked for trial to commence on June 28th. On June 18th, Judge H.F. Atkinson at the request of State Attorney N. Vernon Hawthorne, agreed to delay the trial until July 4th. As Hawthorne stated, he hadn't had time to get his witnesses together. The jury was to be sworn in on July 4th, with testimony to begin the following day. Meanwhile, in the months following the indictments, Green and Nomo had made nationwide appeals for money to their defense. A copy of the newspaper Negro World, edited by Garvey, described the two as active agents of Garvey and innocent of murder. Garvey's followers and other opponents of the anti Garvey organization, referred to as the Afro American Religious and Commercial League, no information could be found the this obscure this obscure organization, for which it was stated Kofi was a special field organizer, dredged up the now tired claims of Kofi being an American born in Georgia with no right to any royal title. Kofi's supporters, however, staunchly persisted to referring to Kofi as Princess and hinted that a cablegram from Garvey was at the bottom of this royal dispute. On July 5th, the day after the jury was sworn in, the actual trial began, with the jury being taken on a field trip to the scene of the shooting, Fox Thompson's Hall, which was being used as a church at the time of the murder. The following day, three witnesses pointed to Green as the gunman and Nemo as the accomplice who gave the signal to shoot. The state rested on July 6th after just 2 days of testimony. The defense was expected to call 20 witnesses, but it was still anticipated the case would reach the jury before the end of the day on July 9th. Green took the stand and swore he was at home the night of the shooting and wasn't even present, while Nemo claimed he was outside of the hall talking with friends when the shooting occurred. With both sides resting as scheduled, the case was handed over to the jury. For a case that had dominated the headlines and had mired in religious and political controversy for months, the verdict was quick in coming. Green and Nemo were both found innocent and walked out of the courthouse free. It was left to Maxwell Cook, lying in a simple grave at Lincoln Memorial Park, to forever be associated as the killer of Kofi. Dead men tell no lies. Although the trial was over, it took another month to finally decide where Kofi would be buried. Until the last moment, it was unclear whether she would rest in Jacksonville or be taken back to Africa. After her murder, over 5 months before, her body had been stored in Jacksonville for several months, while in Jacksonville, St. Petersburg, and Tampa branches of her church vigorously debated. Jacksonville won. On August 16th, 1928, Kofi, referred to in the press as a Nubian princess, swathed in a way reminiscent of Egyptian mummies in robes of black, green, and red, was placed in an impressive bronze casket. After her final prayers before a sea of 10,000 mourners, the casket was entombed in a specially built mausoleum in Jacksonville's city cemetery, the door sealed for eternity. The number of people paying visits or worshiping at her tomb has dwindled over more than 90 years since her burial, but one can occasionally still see the faithful who make the pilgrimage. The, the day Kofi was assassinated remains a sacred day to those who remain devoted to Kofi's church and meet at her tomb every March 8th to remember and pay tribute. While there can't be more than a handful of people alive who were even born before Kofi was slain, there are many who still recall the tales as they were through gener- passed down three generations of followers. And then there is the story of nearby Adorksville, um, Adorkaville. Okay, it says here the lost town of Adorkaville. Some sources state that Kofi had already identified her successor as head of the African Universal Church before her death. Others say her assassination prompted a search for her successor. The latter is more likely, as the 1930 census shows her successor as still living in New York. He was Eli Busabo Nyambolo, Nyambolo, often called Little Brother, a South African with strong ties to the Zulu community. Under his guidance, the church continued to expand, sending missionaries to Africa and opening branches in Florida, Alabama, New York, and the Gold Coast of Africa. It in established prayer bands, industrial clubs, and classes in Black history. Services were conducted in English and Bantu. In 1944, Nyambolo moved the church to an 11-acre parcel of land of the forested dirt, New Kings Road in Jacksonville's rural, mostly black north side. He named the church community compound Adorkaville in honor of Kofi. Helping black people feel connected to Africa was part of the church's role. One of Nyambolo's daughters remembered. This was to carry out what the princess taught, what she wanted, a better relationship between Africa and America. Her thing was, what about your identity? You came from Africa, be proud of who you are. Blah, 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 blah. Um, yeah, so pretty much um, that's pretty much the gist of the article, So if you want to read the rest of the article, just go to the website there, um, coralgablesmuseum.org. Okay. But so with that being said, for those who inquired, um, there you have it. Garvey was not behind the death of Mother Kofi. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that. And For those who want to know more about the Garvey situation in terms of whether or not he was an agent, blah, 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 if you still have questions, you know, we pretty much closed that argument, you know, in the previous lectures. You know, this is really overkill. But, there's still a lot more. Like I said, Garvey is like a whole school of thought in and of itself. But on Tuesday, I'm going to have the professor, Mark Christian, who was also my Black Studies professor in college. Okay, he's going to be on the show weighing in on the Garvey situation as well. Also, for those who are interested in leaving a donation, if you scroll all the way up to the top, you'll see a link for um, information where you can leave a donation via PayPal, and also another where you can leave a donation via Cash App. Okay, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, thank all of those who joined in on the conversation. Okay, and I'll say and I'll close out and say until the next time. Do the dog, e.